Hey, what's up, everybody? Chris here, and I'm bringing you my review of episode 2 of The Last of Us, titled Infected. I think this was actually better than the first episode, which is probably pretty crazy for a lot of people, especially because the first episode, I think, so directly mirrored what we saw with the game. And I think this episode had a little bit more, I don't want to say humanity, because obviously that was a big part of the first episode, but it does a little bit more to start developing some relationships. And of course, the chess pieces, so to speak, had to be set up in that first episode to get to where we are now. But I did really like the way they approached this episode because it really sort of focuses a lot on sort of this fungus that's really caused the apocalypse in the world and sort of how it operates. It gives us a little bit of that world building that we already had, of course, in episode 1, but now we've got more in depth sort of commentary associated with that. And one thing that I loved is the structure that they clearly are sort of going for here. So the first episode starts with kind of a 60s era talk show where a scientist is talking about the possibility of what eventually happens. And then we get a little bit more of the backstory here, right? And I believe it was in, gosh, I can't remember what country they begin this episode in, but it's abroad in terms of the United States, it's elsewhere. And so a doctor is brought in to look at one of the first casualties of the infection that's starting to spread before anybody really knows what it is. And she recognizes immediately what's going on. And one of the people talking with her sort of says, well, what can we do if we can't develop a vaccine or a medicine? Because she says that's not even possible. What can we do? And she's like, just bomb the city. All you can do is try to destroy it physically with bombs, with fire, in so much as you can. And so you really get a sense of the desperation early on. But I like this. And one thing that I like about this, I think, is that a lot of these types of apocalyptic movies, and I guess this technically is not a zombie thing because it's more of an infection than, the undead coming back to life. But a lot of times they don't really go into much of the backstory about where it started because it's about the human journey and the human experience and how the humans are the real monsters, all that kind of stuff. But that, in a lot of ways, always frustrated me with a lot of these types of things. And I like here that there's a conscious effort being made to explain sort of the history, kind of the unraveling of all of this. And I think it's made that much more effective because of what the world has just gone through, right? We're not, I guess you could say at this point, we are kind of post-COVID, maybe not officially, but it makes it that much more poignant, right? Because we've seen what a pandemic looks like. We've seen how destructive it can be. Obviously, it's not on this scale as what we're seeing in the show, but I think it hits home a little bit more with that. And so, for whatever reason, the first episode I thought was really good. It didn't kind of hit me in that way. The second episode, I think, does. I think it just starts to resonate a little bit more, and the timing of it, just sort of where we're at in history right now, makes it that much more effective. So I really enjoyed it. I like to, and I'm getting into spoilers here, right? So if you haven't seen it yet, obviously go see it, then come back and check out my thoughts on this. But I really like, too, the way they handled the clickers. And one of my good friends was like, hey, if you're going to, watch this, do it with a pair of headphones. And I threw in some earbuds, watch this episode. The sound design in that was really good. Michael, you were right about that, for sure. That was great. That whole scene in the museum where they're trying to hide, they're trying to get away. It was a little bit predictable, I think, that Tess was going to end up getting bitten, right? Because eventually it's just going to be Joel and Ellie. Like, it's sort of trending in that direction. That was going to happen at some point. I didn't necessarily think Tess was going to be gone this early in the series. But that was something that was initially hidden from Ellie and Joel, but Ellie figures it out, and you kind of know that that's coming. They have a skirmish inside this museum with the clickers. They get away, and it's not disclosed immediately, but you assume that one of them had been bitten. Of course, it had to be Tess, just because if you played the game or know anything about the story, you kind of know where this is headed. So that part of it was just a tad predictable, but it didn't take away from the emotional impact of it, right? The show still had weight. It still had resonance in that she starts to realize, Tess does, and I think eventually Joel, that Ellie really is the cure to this thing, right? Because she gets bitten. Also, again, they've seen that she's got bite marks from where she initially had been attacked and was not infected, and Joel was skeptical of that. But they see that she is not turning and getting infected while Tess is, after having gotten bitten at the same time. So I do think there's a lot of great emotional impact here. I think that it causes the episode to stand out. A lot of what was set up in the first episode just naturally sort of carries into this one. And that's what you want to see with a story like this, that it flows really well, that the emotional buildup is there. And in just 2 episodes, I think we've gotten something that's really special. Again, the first episode to me, while it did a lot of things really well, and of course, I think the impact of Joel losing his daughter in that episode is lessened a little bit for people that have played the game and are familiar with the story. This episode to me hit just a little bit harder. I love what they're doing here. I love the design too, the practical effects of the clickers, the practical effects of the fungus being all over the place, even the grossness, and it wasn't a practical effect, of course, but the grossness of Tess when she's sort of overtaken by the infected and the fungus sort of goes from one mouth to another. like it was just really cool how they set that up. And there's actually kind of it was almost like a reference to Avatar a little bit, sort of the AWA thing where when one infected dies, the fungus can feel where that person is and then contact the other infected wherever they are in the vicinity, and they can come root out that threat and turn somebody else and spread that way. So I love the world building here. I like where we're headed. If you saw the second episode, let me know what you think about it down in the comments below. Again, I think HBO has done a great job with this. I can't wait to see where we go with episode 3, and when that comes out, I'll be back with my next review.